Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics. In the past, we have talked about ways to make money in the fish keeping hobby, and in fact, I did an entire series on breeding fish for profit, which I will link in the upper right hand corner as well as in the description below. But there are other ways to make money in the fish keeping hobby, and perhaps ways that are a little bit easier and don't require quite as many resources and not quite as much time. Hope you enjoy the video. Appreciate you being here. Now yes, breeding fish for profit can be a lot of fun. It can be a challenge, and it can make you money in the aquarium hobby. However, there might be another way, and a way that might be a little bit easier, and that is growing out fish for profit. In other words, what you do is you find fish, buy fish that are on the smaller side, you grow them out, wait for them to show their awesome color, their awesome finish, and sell those later for more money. There are some significant advantages to doing this compared to breeding fish for profit. One, juveniles tend to be a lot sturdier, a lot hardier compared to fry. And so you're probably going to have less fish loss if you're buying juveniles, bringing them in, putting them in a fish tank and growing them out. They're also going to be easier to care for. Often with fry, you've got to hatch things like live baby brine shrimp, or maybe you need some micro infusoria, and that can be a little bit difficult and maybe overwhelming for some fish keepers. The nice thing about most juvenile fish is they readily take to flakes and pellets and most of your store-bought foods. Of course, another advantage is you're probably not going to need as many tanks to grow out juveniles as you would for breeding. I mean, let's face it, when you're breeding for profit, you need the breeding tank, the fry up here. Often you're going to need multiple tanks to allow those fry to grow out. With the juveniles, it's best just to have a tank that you know is large enough for those juveniles to grow from the size you bring them in at to the size you're going to sell them at. And so maybe you're going to need a little bit of a larger tank, but most likely you're just going to need one. Now there are some things to consider if you're going to be growing out fish and trying to sell them later. The first thing is the types of fish. You're looking for fish that don't show a lot of color, that aren't at their best as a juvenile, but then look much different later on. And so some examples that come to mind, a lot of our peacock cichlids. They're usually brown or silver when they're young, and then they show this amazing color as they get older. This is a common way for people to have the juveniles, bring them in and grow them out, and later sell them for a lot of money. It's not uncommon for us when we're breeding fish where juveniles might go for $20 for a batch of 5 at a size of maybe an inch to an inch and a half. But grow those fish out to 3 or 4 inches where they're showing color and the fins are starting to look nice. You might get $20 to $30 each at one of our swaps. Another type of fish to consider are some of the smaller South and Central American cichlids like a pistogramma. Often they don't show great color until they get a little bit larger. You could also look at geophagus. Now, geophagus tend to grow very slowly, and that's something you have to consider, but they also tend to show much greater color as they get older. If you're not into cichlids, rainbow fish might be something to consider. Again, when they're young, they're really kind of boring looking often, but as they get older, that's when the color comes in, and so you really have to do your research to determine what types of fish really don't show a lot of color when they're younger, and then they grow into that color later on. You also have to be very careful because not all fish do well for a growing out fish for profit type of situation. I'm thinking about a lot of the large South and Central American cichlids. Here, you might be growing out fish for loss because a lot of times people have a hard time housing a 12-inch Oscar or a 9-inch Midas cichlid. These are fish that as they get older get very aggressive, and so they may be very difficult to add into an established South or Central American fish tank. So you really want to be able to do your research, make sure you are getting fish that are going to be sellable when they get at a larger size. You also need to consider your market. We talked about this in the breeding fish for profit series. By the way, I'm going to put that in the upper right hand corner as well as in the description below if you want more information there. But it doesn't do a lot of good to grow up, let's say, African cichlids. If you live in an area that has very soft water with a very low pH, there's just not going to be as big of a market for them. Likewise, in our market where our water is harder with a higher pH, I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time trying to grow up a pistogramma that generally do better with softer water and a lower pH. I'm not going to spend time growing out discus because a lot of people would have to adjust their water parameters to give them the water parameters that are best for their overall health. So the bottom line is this: you don't have to be an expert master breeder to make money in the fish keeping hobby. You just need to have a way to recognize a good deal. A lot of these good deals you're going to find at fish clubs, right? Your swaps and your auctions. Usually these juveniles go for a relatively small amount of money. The other place where you might want to look is on Aquabid. When somebody is selling 5 or 6 juvenile peacocks or pistos, you might be able to find them for less, and with a few months of patience, maybe 6 to 8 months, you can have a fish that's worth a lot more money. So I just wanted to give you another way to potentially make money in the hobby. Do your research, make sure that you are looking at fish that actually are going to look awesome later on. Would love to hear from you in the comments section below. Have you ever done this? What fish really worked for you? Appreciate you being here, and we'll see you in the next one.